Boys and girls, welcome to Everyday Math Lesson 10.7, Exploring Area. The materials that you'll need today, notebook paper, pencil, math journal, and you'll also want to make sure that you have socks on your feet. Let's get started. So we'll first use just notebook paper or whiteboard and marker if available to write down answers from the next slides. If the speed is too fast, please pause as often as needed. Write the following numbers in order from least to greatest in your notebook. Then find the median. I'll first read the numbers to you. So we have the number 349, 487, 204, 981, 500, 487, and 210. Notice how these are not in order yet. So again, press pause, put them in order, find the median, and then press play. When you put your numbers in order, you should have had 204, 210, 349, 487, 487 again, 500, 981. Then when you crossed off, you had your middle number or your median at 487. Let's try one more like this. For this next one, again, find your median using the numbers 2,581, 2005, 3,096, 8,888, 5,210, and 3,096. So put those in order, find the median, and then press play to hear the answer. When putting them in order, you should have had 2,500, 2,581, 3,096, 3,096 again, 5,210, 8,888. Notice how this time we had an even number. So when you crossed off, you had two numbers in between. And it's a good thing these two numbers were the exact same. So we know our median was 3,096. For this next problem, we're going to be talking a little bit about area. So to find the area, we're counting the squares to figure out how much is inside. So looking at this first one, what would be the area? How much of it is shaded in blue? If you said 9, you are correct. Looking at the second one, how much is shaded? If you said 4, you are correct. Let's practice two more like this. Looking at this problem, how much is shaded in blue? If you said 7, you are correct. Now I'm going to give you one that looks a little bit different. How much do you think this time? Here's a little clue for you. I want you to start by counting the number of whole squares. And then looking at those numbers, if more than half is shaded, count that square. If less than half is shaded, do not count that square. So I can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, giving me an area of 7. I did not count these two squares because less than half were shaded. We're going to be finding the area and we're going to be using two different pictures today that are going to look a little bit more like this, where it's not going to be whole squares filled in. So the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is to put your notebook to the side and to take out your math journal. We're going to be talking about pages 248, 249, and 252. Notice how in today's lesson, we will not be talking about page 250 and 251. So for this next activity, you will need to trace your hand and then your foot. It might be helpful to have a partner when tracing. If you don't have a partner, that's okay. Still try to trace it on your own, But again, it just might be a little bit easier when you have a partner. But one tip, when you're tracing your hand, I want you to keep your fingers close together. So I'm going to show you what this will look like. So on page 248, notice how my hand is close together. That's going to make it a little bit easier when finding the area. So can you trace your hand again on page 248? Once your hand is traced, and if you need to press pause for more time, please do that. But once your hand is traced, now it's time to find the area. When we're finding the area, we're going to count the number of whole squares inside of our handprint, and that's going to tell us how many square centimeters our handprint is. Remember that tip from earlier in the video. If more than half of a square is inside your handprint, we're going to count that whole square. If less than half of the square is inside your handprint, do not count that square. When you have that, then we're going to record our area on our handprint at the bottom. So again, we're going to count them and record our answer for our area at the bottom. Why don't you try and then press play to watch how I did it. So taking a look at the area of my hand, you'll notice I used two different colors. For red, I looked for all of the squares that were completely inside the hand, and I counted 96 of them. Then you can see some of my purple dots. The purple dots were the ones that I felt more than half of the square was inside the hand. And I found that I had 25 of those. So when I added up, I had 121 squares that were inside my hand. So the area of my handprint was 121 square centimeters, or 121 SQCM, which also stands for square centimeters. Now you maybe had an answer that was different than mine, and since we all have different size hands. But again, just double check to make sure that you found your area correctly. Now we're going to do a very similar thing, but the next thing we're going to do is with our foot. Now we're going to trace our foot in our math journal on page 249, and this is where our socks come in hand. So it's going to be a little bit easier for us to get a nice tracing of our foot if we have a sock on our foot. Okay? So again, if you have a partner and you want your partner to trace your foot for you, that might be helpful. Otherwise, you can do that on your own. I'll show you mine. So again, this is page 249. Notice how I had my sock on and I traced my foot on my paper. Once I have it traced, I'm going to do just like what I did with my hand, where I'm going to count all of the squares inside. And again, I can maybe start with the whole squares, and then if it's more than half, let's show you an example. Take a look at this one. It's more than half inside the foot. I would count this one. But the one right next to it, notice how that's less than half inside the foot. So I would not count that one. So why don't you solve yours, fill in your answers, and then press play to hear mine. So pause the video now. For my foot, again, I did the red dots when I counted all of the whole squares, and I had 112 whole squares. Then I went back and counted how many partial squares I had, and I had 19. When I added, I know that 9 plus 2 is 11. I carried my 1, put my 1 below. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3, and then I added my hundreds. So I had a total of 131 square centimeters, or 131 SQCM, which also stands for square centimeters. Now again, you probably had an answer very different than mine since we all have different size feet. If you have any questions on this, you can ask your classroom teacher, or you could also ask somebody at home. The next thing that we're going to talk about is our math box page, which is page 252. So for question number 1, draw at least one line of symmetry. For question number 2, color 2/3 of the leaves green. Question 3, write as dollars and cents. So for each of these, put them in dollar and cents notation. For question number 4, they gave you the rule, so you need to figure out what's out for each of those. Remember when you're getting one like 97, which is already in the out, then you need to do the opposite. And then for the bottom, you can pick a number and then either add 9 if it's in the inside or subtract 9 if it's on the outside. For question number 5, you're using less than, greater than, or equal to. If you want a little help, you can look at your math journal page 310 for a chart that talks about hours to minutes, months to years, and days to weeks. And for our last question, number 6, use counters or maybe draw a picture on the side to help solve. If we have 15 marbles and they're shared equally, and each child gets 6, how many children are sharing, and then how many marbles are left over. Boys and girls, once you're done, please take a picture of your math boxes and send that picture on Seesaw to your classroom teacher. We will go over this page in our next video. Thank you.